Okay, you beautiful New Zealanders. Well, before we dive into today's video, I need to explain some things, just so we get the most out of the video I'm about to show you. First, activist Maori plan to take over the country by 2040. You may not know that, but that's true. 2040 is the date given in the He Puapua Report or document. That's a document that you may never have heard about, and I'll put a copy of it in the description of the video. He Puapua remained hidden from public view, this document, until May 2021, when it was leaked to the opposition National and ACT parties, who subsequently released the report to the public. We could summarize this document by saying that it is a Maori roadmap to take over the country by 2040. That's how you could best describe it. Dr. John Robinson has written a brilliant book on He Puapua, which all Kiwis should read. There's a picture of the cover on it on the right-hand side. Quote, says Dr. Robinson, many of the activists and iwi leaders intend a totally dual government system with separate Maori and non-Maori houses of parliament and a Maori veto on all legislation. A Maori veto on all legislation means private tribal companies have the final say on everything that goes on in New Zealand, on what laws and legislation are passed and accepted in both houses of parliament. Dr. Robinson goes on to say the words in the He Puapua report insist that power, full authority, must go to Maori. In other words, Maori want to take over the entire country. He goes on, the proposal of Mai Tiki Mai, that's another document, gives the iwi leadership around 3/4 of the power, quote, to rule the entire country, together with a veto in the joint sphere, the other quarter. Everyone else will be disenfranchised. This is a blueprint for the complete rule of New Zealand by a determined minority, and there's the quote, a reference. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because in the coalition agreement, it said that all work on He Puapua would stop. But has it? Absolutely not. In fact, it's full steam ahead under national. The main thing I want you to get from this video is that Luxton is all for forcing Maori language into the public space. Why is this when we have 160 cultures living in New Zealand? Yeah, I want to know, why does Chris want to force Te Reo into New Zealand? What's behind this? Why not Mandarin or Cantonese? There are more Asians living in New Zealand than Maoris. Why only Maori language? What's pushing him to do this? As we have shown in other videos, Luxton is carrying one, a wrong understanding of the treaty. He believes it's a partnership. That's driving him to want to Maorify New Zealand. Number two, Chris is carrying a wrong understanding of key words in the treaty, namely Tēnā Rangatiratanga in Article 2. The treaty writers in 1840 said, this phrase means possession or ownership. Chris thinks it means Maori absolute authority or Maori absolute sovereignty. It does not mean those things. Number three, he thinks the word property in Article 2 to onga means treasures. It does not mean treasures, Chris. Hardcore activists believe it means treasures. Number four, in Article 1, Luxton believes the Maori word kawanatanga means government. No, Chris. It means sovereignty. Sovereignty is the way the treaty writers understood this word in 1840. So what's happening here is that Chris is carrying a whole truckload of activist understandings of the treaty, and so this has made him pro-co-governance and pro-Maorification. He's got the mind of an activist. So as a result of carrying these activist understandings of the treaty, Chris elevates Maori above the other 159 cultures in New Zealand. With this in mind, let's dive into today's video and see what Chris has to say about Te Reo and bilingual signs.
The debate about bilingual signage is heating up in Nelson, whether or not Te Reo should be used on signs like kura, as well as the word school, was raised by angry locals during the national leader's latest visit. He was met with a big applause when asked what action he would take.
Okay, now this video was taken just before Luxon was elected, but I believe he's being really deceitful, not telling the truth.
You've already promised to rescind the Three Waters program. Will you do the same for all the government departments that have changed their names that a lot of us can't understand?
So the question is, will you rescind the names of government departments which are in Maori that none of us can understand? But really the issue is much deeper than this. The issue is not to do with reviving Maori language or giving Maori language a boost. It actually has to do with grooming the population And the reason that I would say that is that we know there's more information available to us about New Zealand's political situation that other countries are not actually having to incur at this time. We know from He Puapua, we know from what Maori have said in videos and other documents like Mai Tiki Mai, that they have a goal to take over the country. So their big push for te reo in the public space has nothing to do with reviving the Maori language. It is getting the country ready for tribal rule, grooming the country for tribal rule. That's what it's about. And Chris Luxon just does not get that. I actually think that Chris Luxon is naive and silly, stupid. He does not realize what's going on. He is not politically aware. He does not know that he is being played by Maori. He does not realise that he is being duped by Maori. And notice who's on the stage with him, Tama Potaka. So Tama Potaka is the biggest activist in New Zealand's government. His master's thesis reads like an activist manifesto, and he was headhunted by Chris Luxon, and he does all the heavy lifting for Maorification and co-governance in the National Party. And so these two are working together. What Chris also does not realise is that these Maori activists are extremely tricky and cunning. What do I mean? Well, remember how suddenly the word Aotearoa was attached to New Zealand? We had Aotearoa New Zealand. It suddenly appeared about 2020. Everyone wondered what the heck was going on. But over time, the population settled down and a lot of people got used to the double banger name of our country. Then what happened? Well, over time, the name New Zealand was gradually phased out. We're seeing that right now. Today, we hardly see it at all, the name New Zealand. Why is this? Well, it's a strategy of the activists to work little by little, not too fast, so as to alarm people. This is how they take hold of the country, and this is how they've done it. It's going to be the same with government departments. They start with English and te reo, then over time, English will be phased out. Chris Luxon will leave New Zealand and go to the UN or somewhere else, but the Maorification will continue, leaving us to deal with the problem. For the last 180 years, our history is literally littered with politicians making big mistakes. They retire or move offshore, and a new set of politicians take over. They attempt to clean up the mistakes of their predecessors, but they make new mistakes, and so it goes. This is what's going to happen with Chris Luxon.
How many people, we all understand school, but I've seen signs change to kura, and we just don't understand all this.
Okay, the point is, it's the person who asked the question shouldn't be saying we don't understand all this. They need to understand what is the reason behind this. If it was just the odd Maori sign on the street somewhere and there wasn't an ideological push behind them, grooming behind them, then I wouldn't mind. But because this is ideologically driven, and the end game is complete control of Maori by 2040, then this is a huge worry. But this audience does not realise what is going on. They are like sheep being led to the slaughter.
Yeah, we're all equal. And
I got the question. Yep. Thank you, mate.
We want some action.
Yeah, well, mate, the first thing you got to do, buddy, is you got to vote October the 14th to get me in there to government.
So somebody shouts out from the back, we want some action, and Chris Luxon shouts out, well, the first thing you got to do is vote for me on October the 14th. Boy, did we not realise what we were voting in.
Doesn't look like a great start to the answer, right? But there is more to it. Mr. Luxon went on to say he has had similar discussions recently.
I was thinking, Waka Kotahi is the transport agency, and Whatu Ora and Tipu Kinga, well, that's actually the health department, and that's also the polytechnics. And so I am of the view that we should rename our government departments in English so that people can navigate their government.
Okay, so he gets a great clap for that, saying that we should have bilingual signage so that people can navigate the government.
But I'm also of the view that actually we should have te reo on there, and we can have dual language on it, but you have to have a choice, right? You have to be able to navigate it.
All right, it was applause. Christopher Luxon joins us now. Mr. Luxon, why did it take you so long to answer the question?
I don't have any problem with him taking so long to answer the question. I think this is a bit of a moot point by the interviewer, but anyway, let's persevere with this.
I did answer the question, and what I said very clearly was, in that case, I had someone ask me a question. I had a heckler at the back. I was trying to say, hang on, I'll get to the answer. I'm not actually in government. They think I am in government, but I'm not. And I answered the question to say very clearly that actually I believe that bilingual is fine, but actually what we need is actually be able to have a choice where New Zealanders, if they haven't been raised, are learning some te reo. And just remember, the average age of a Kiwi is 38.
Chris says that the average age of New Zealanders is 38. Now, why does he say that? Because he's saying that it's young people who speak te reo. Well, Chris, why do young people speak te reo? The answer is that for the last 50 years, our education system has been targeted by activists with propaganda and brainwashing to capture these young minds. So Chris is not aware of this either. So let me just show you this television clip from News Hub, which is an activist TV station, and Mike McRoberts is an activist reporter. So let's watch this together.
Welcome back. Over the course of Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, Māori Language Week, you might have heard the term Mahi Karona. It's an ambitious goal to have 1 million New Zealanders speaking some form of te reo by 2040.
No, really, it's a goal to have 1 million New Zealanders completely brainwashed by 2040. But let's keep going.
In our latest Because It Matters story, we look at how realistic that goal is. I koia te kōrero. Walk the talk. Billed as a chance to show pride for te reo Māori, thousands of Auckland school children took the chance to do just that, claiming Maunga Kiki, One Tree Hill. But it'll take tens of thousands more like them over the next 2 decades if Mahi Karona, 1 million New Zealanders speaking te reo, is to be achieved.
We don't expect everyone to be fluent overnight, but we want to be able to create an environment that supports New Zealanders to connect to the language, use the language, see the language.
It always sounds very interesting and very innocent and very, don't worry about a thing, this is all wonderful. But underneath it, there's a big ideological hook, and it's wrong.
And hear the language wherever possible.
Morena to you too.
See, I'm a school teacher, and I know that there's a limited amount of time every day to teach these kids the basics. The definition of education is to prepare students for success in life. And that limited time in a school each day should be spent preparing those children to succeed in life, teaching them maths, reading, writing, the absolute basics to help them succeed. Maori language is not something that's going to help them succeed in life. It is a redundant language. It has no use in the commercial world. It's not an international language because it's not going to help these children as they get older.
Environments like Gumboots Daycare in Helensville.
See, the thing is, for every minute that you spend teaching children te reo and Maori language, you're taking away time teaching them English, maths, reading, writing. And so this is a trade-off, and it's a really bad trade-off.
Pākehā preschoolers are being taught by mostly Pākehā teachers in the...
Did you hear that? It's Pākehā school children who are being taught by Pākehā teachers. In other words, this is really a religious experience. Many teachers and many schools have joined in sort of the Maori religion. If this was Islam, or this was Hinduism, or this was Christianity, this would be shut down immediately. But because it's Maori religion, it's fine.
Basics of te reo.
The kids are amazing. They pick it up really fast. They're really open to learning new things. They're taking the reo home. We're getting feedback from the parents about how the children be like, we can't have our kai until we have our karakia.
And it's through karakia and waiata and simple instructions like put on your gumboots that is exposing these young minds to the language. You don't have to look far to understand what a huge advantage that will be.
Mike says you don't have to look far to see what a huge advantage that will be. Really, Mike? Oh, come on, be serious. The reason they're doing this is because they want to groom these children's minds early so that when they become voters, they'll vote for all things Maori, and then they will be able to vote Maori MPs into Parliament and take over the Parliament legally by having a Maori Parliament. That's basically the plan, to capture these voters early, to brainwash them, to groom them, getting ready for voting.
As they get older.
Some of the teachers struggle. They really struggle. But the teachers who do the best are the ones who are really saying, what can I do? How can I do this?
With te reo teaching resources so stretched, it's going to take a buy-in from all New Zealanders to ensure the language flourishes.
Okay, so that's an advert for all New Zealanders to join in also innocently get involved with the propaganda and the brainwashing.
So what's in it for these young ones to continue that journey?
See, I think this is so wrong because children are innocent. They don't know about ideological claptrap. They don't know how they can be manipulated for political reasons. We should be guardians of these little children, teaching them the basics in life, in education, reading, writing, maths, etc. Because that's the stuff that's going to help them succeed in life, not learning te reo. It is an absolute waste of their time, and we shouldn't be allowing this in our schools.
The experts say it's all about identity.
The experts say it's all about identity. What does that mean? That we all identify as Maori? I don't want to identify as a Maori, and I know most New Zealanders don't. Why would we? Come on.
Very small global context where everything is accessible, we find that need to be able to stand out amongst the crowd, and Te Reo Māori helps us do that.
So they want Maori to stand out in the crowd. Well, at the moment, Maori do stand out in the crowd, but for all the wrong reasons. They top the negative social statistics, record suicide, alcoholism, drug abuse, incarceration rates, violent crime, poverty, unemployment, child abuse, animal cruelty, obesity, welfare dependency, and on it goes. So my thinking is, if Maori want to stand out in the crowd in a positive way and have real identity, nothing is stopping them at all. So why don't they just start performing? Why don't they clean up? Become the model cultural group in society who model brilliant ethics, morals, family values, and work ethic. We'd love to see that. The whole country would love to see that. Maori leaders never talk about this kind of thing. Why don't they? If Maori lifted their performance to match their language, te reo, they would truly have an identity to be proud of. But the way it is, just speaking te reo without a corresponding lift in performance makes so-called identity embarrassing. I would have thought that.
Why does the government want more co-governance?
In terms of why we want more because we want to close the gap in terms of Māori and Pākehā in every area, Jack, in every area in society, whether it's education, employment, in the socio-economic area, Māori lag behind. In fact, the only area we don't lag behind in is in skin cancer. So in every area of society, we want to try and close the gap.
Now, don't forget, Chris Luxton is learning te reo himself personally, he and his wife, and he was the person responsible for Maorifying Air New Zealand. And so he's got a track record of promoting Maorification, promoting co-governance in whether it's business or government.
Most of us have grown up learning the te reo version of the national anthem. I'm trying to learn te reo because I like the language and love.
He says most of us have grown up singing the national anthem in te reo. No, we haven't. I guarantee most of the country, actually, when the national anthem comes on, we sing it in English. We don't sing it in Maori. I certainly don't.
The language, but actually for many others, they don't understand. And as a result, we've just got to give them choice.
Oh, Chris, you're so naive. Chris is not picking up on the ideological undercurrent that is going on in this country, the drive for radical Maori to take over the nation. So Chris is just going along with all this like a sheep to the slaughter.
They can navigate those public services.
Those people are not embarrassed, though, that they don't know it. They don't like it. He made his point very clear. He doesn't like another language.
And my answer is very clearly, English. I'm very comfortable with dual language. I think it's important. I lived in a place like Canada where we had English and French.
Yeah.
I lived in the US for many years where we had English and Spanish.
Okay, so here's some facts about Canada and about America. So here are the facts. 42 million Americans speak Spanish as their first language, or 12% of the population. That's a big chunk. Bilingual signage is in practice only for practical purposes. That is, so that the Spanish speakers can read the signs. It's only there for practical reasons. It's not there for ideological reasons. That's the only reason they're doing it, because they have such a big population of Spanish-speaking people, and Spanish is their first language, and it's the language they speak all the time and nothing else. It's the same in Canada. 20.2% of the entire Canadian population speak French as their first language. This is why they have bilingual signs. As a matter of interest, Quebec is the only province whose sole official language is French. Today, 71.2% of Quebecers are first language francophones. New Zealand, on the other hand, is very different from the US or Canada, the two countries Chris Luxton cites. Maoris make up 19% of our population, or 987,000 people, according to the latest stats. Of this 19%, only 3% say they speak te reo fluently. Now, here is the key point. That 3% also speak English fluently. In other words, they're bilingual. Conclusion? There is absolutely no practical reason to have bilingual signs in New Zealand at all. So why is the government doing it? Why is Chris pushing this? The answer is that it's ideological, and Chris Luxton is driving it. The problem is, Chris is green and naive, being led like a lamb to the slaughter. He is under the spell of the Maori radicals and doesn't know it. He thinks that by learning Te Reo and having government departments with bilingual signage that he is being trendy, politically correct, trying to be the Nelson Mandela of New Zealand. Well, stop it, Chris. We don't want Te Reo shoved down our throats. If Maori want to speak Te Reo, there's absolutely nothing stopping them on the maraes and in their homes. Nothing at all. And here's another good point. None of the other 159 cultural groups in New Zealand are forcing their language on the rest of us. So why are Maoris doing this? As I said, the only answer can be that it's ideological. It's activists who are grooming the country, preparing the population for tribal rule. And by the way, the Asian population in New Zealand now, officially, is larger than the Maori population. So if Chris was being practical by having bilingual signs and truly catering for the language needs of the dominant populations in New Zealand, the bilingual signs should be in Mandarin, not Maori at all. He's not being practical by wanting bilingual signs. He's being deceitful. He wants to further co-governance and Maorification, but he doesn't want us to know that, and that's a fact.
Quite okay, but you've got to be able to give a choice so that people can use whatever language they wish, and they need to understand what those services are.
So Chris is pulling the wool over the eyes of the New Zealand public here. Let me tell you this, the only places where bilingual signs are used in the world is where there are large population groups in those countries who don't speak the dominant language. They're there for practical reasons, but none of those countries, here's a key point, none of those countries where bilingual signs are used are under threat of a population group taking over the country. That's the key point. They're not the same as us. America and Canada, they don't have a group of people, French and the Spanish, trying to take over the country. None of them. Chris hasn't woken up to this yet. He's so green and he's so naive, truly.
But what I'm there is opening myself up to a town hall, to a public meeting where anybody can come along and ask any questions that they wish. And I give a straight answer to those.
He doesn't give a straight answer. You never reveal to the public what your true intentions were for Maorification and co-governance once you got into power. Your mantra was, I'm going to do the best for all New Zealanders. We want to see all New Zealanders prosper. That's all you ever said. So you kept quiet your desire to further Maorification and co-governance. And most of the public in New Zealand were absolutely voting for you, thinking that you were going to be the guy to take those all out. But you haven't. Why, Chris?
Yes, we want to see more New Zealanders embrace Te Reo, and it's been fantastic to see that.
Okay, so he thinks it's fantastic to see Te Reo over everything, so he's a proponent of it. We don't want it. We don't want it shoved down our throat. Stop pushing Maorification and co-governance, Chris. We don't want this. Okay, that's where the interview finished, and they go on to other issues. But I'll post the full interview in the description of this video so you can get it yourself. Okay, let's wrap this up. I want to just finish on a bit of a high point here. There was a interview between Sean Plunkett on the platform and the Mayor of Palmerston North, Grant Smith. And what Grant Smith did is he wrote to the Minister in charge of local government, and with 50 other mayors, they signed a document saying they didn't want referendums on Maori wards. They wanted to have Maori on wards without being elected. They wanted Maori wards. Sean Plunkett interviewed this mayor, Grant Smith. Grant Smith says he knows the Prime Minister well, and Prime Minister would never agree to having referendums for Maori wards in councils. This is what he said. So out of the mouth of babes. That affirms everything that I'm talking about. So listen to this.
Right, we're talking, if you like, provincial New Zealand, though, local body New Zealand. And local bodies in New Zealand have been in part of some controversy, particularly in the last week or so, with 50 mayors and councillors writing or signing a letter to the government calling for them to think again about the disestablishment of Māori wards that have not, in local bodies, that have not been established with a referendum amongst ratepayers.
And I just thought it was a huge overreach. And I understand it's a coalition agreement, but I know the Prime Minister and some of the others, they won't be in agreement with this.
How do you know that? As Chris Luxon said, he's not in agreement with it.
No, he hasn't, but I've just seen...
Then how do you know that he isn't?
So, look, I know the man reasonably well.
Please share this video with everyone everywhere. The mainstream media should be reporting on the issues I am raising in these videos, but they're not. Why aren't they? Well, they're corrupt. Why are they corrupt? They are collaborating with Maori activists. There's no doubt about that. In the final analysis, the people of New Zealand, that's us, have ultimate power, not the politicians. Did you know that? The people can kick out the people in power and they can put them into power. How are we going to do that? Well, awareness is the key to change. If enough people in New Zealand become aware of the issues I am raising, we can save this beautiful country. So share these videos everywhere so that come the next election, we can vote the right people in and kick out the people who are destroying New Zealand.